Thank you for joining me in my literature class, and I'm so excited to be here to take you literature again today. I am your delectable tutor. My name is Oluwatomisin Ayofejesu, and recently I have been teaching you poem, or let's say poetry. I've been telling you some things about poetry, and as you know, poetry is part of the genres of literature. Poetry is expressive, express what is in your mind, but with constrained words. That is poetry. And I've told you the different types of poetry, which includes elegy, dirge, epic, pastoral, narrative, and all that. So today I'll be telling you the differences between some poems that look similar. But before then, let me make you this known to you. The writer of a poem is a poet. The writer of a poem is a poet. And a compilation of poems is called anthology. A compilation of poems is called anthology. Now, to the business of the day. Differences between some poems that look similar. I'll be looking at the epic poem and the narrative poem, and I'll be looking at the dirge and the elegy. Now, as I told you, the epic poem is a long narrative poem. So it tells a story. So it's a long narrative poem. It tells a story. While the narrative poem also tells a story, but there is a difference. Epic poems are of book length and they tell of heroic deeds. Epic poems are of book length and tell heroic deeds, or let me put it this way, they tell heroic stories. The narrative poems, on the other hand, simply tell a story it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. Epic poems are longer than narrative poems, and all epic poems are narratives, but not all narrative poems are epics. So those are the differences between the epic poem and the narrative poem. Now, let's look at the difference between the dirge and the elegy. As you know, dirge and elegy, they are both poems that express mourning for the dead. However, as I said, there are differences between the dirge and the elegy. Now, the dirge is written for a specific funeral or memorial service, while elegy is a general poem of mourning. The dirge is more somber and straightforward, while the elegy is reflexive. The elegy is reflective and expressive. A dirge is shorter and simpler, while an elegy is longer and formal. So those are the differences between the dirge and the elegy. I'll take it again. The dirge is written for a specific funeral or memorial service, while the elegy is a general poem of mourning. The dirge is more somber and straightforward, while the elegy is reflective and expressive. A dirge is shorter and simpler, while an elegy is longer and formal. Well, that's it for today. The differences between the epic and the narrative poems, and the differences between the elegy and the dirge. I am your delectable tutor. You can always drop comments and you can subscribe. You can ask your questions, and I will always be there to answer your questions.